Revelation, and we're going to begin with verse number 1. And let's read, let's see. Let's read 3 of those verses. And who would like to read tonight? Okay, Brother Richard, read verses 1 through 3.
All right.
And 13.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth was as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him power, and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast.
All righty. So let's go back to verse number 1. Okay, this may sound very mysterious and hard to understand, but it is not anywhere near as hard to understand as the sun-clad woman. If you can make it through the sun-clad woman, we'll get through this, guaranteed. And so what is interesting to note right off the bat is John is now standing on a seashore. He has been taken to heaven, at least in the spirit, because the Lord has shown him many things in heaven, the 24 elders and the seals being broken, the book being handed over to Christ, many, but now he is on a seashore. So is this in heaven, or did the Lord send him back to earth? I kind of think it's in heaven. I kind of think the whole thing is a visionary opening of in a spiritual nature, and God is just transporting him to show him what we would call a video of the future to come. But the Lord is showing him more than a video. He's actually given him an inside seat and a viewing of what is going to transpire. But this ocean, this sea is very, it has a meaning to it. For the Jews and for any biblical prophecy, when you talk about the sea, they're talking about the Mediterranean Sea. And when you're speaking of the Mediterranean Sea, that's of course, the largest ocean next to any of these empires that we have talked about, whether you're talking about Babylon, the Medes and the Persians, the Greeks, and of course the Romans. The whole empire of Rome was around the Mediterranean Sea. And so this is why the setting of the sea, because we're going to be talking about a revived Roman Empire. That's what Antichrist is really going to rule over, is a revived Roman Empire. Rome fell, and we know that. They are of no power militarily to speak of today, but the papacy is in Rome, and a lot of power is wielded through the Catholic Church, because it's worldwide, especially in its land holdings. And also, you can't say that the Roman Empire is entirely dead, but it will be revived. And this is why we're talking about the Mediterranean Ocean right here. And it talks about a beast that will rise up out of the sea. So verse number 1 is telling you that the Antichrist, the beast, is going to rise up from a country out of the old Roman Empire. Now, to know exactly which one, we may not know that. The book of Daniel, as we will see, might give us a little more of a hint than the book of Revelation is giving us as to the origin of the nation that the Antichrist will come out of. I would say, as far as what's going on in the world today, I would look for a nation And mind you, we will not be here when he is entirely revealed. But you may have seen this man on TV at one time or another. Not that he's the Antichrist yet, but he will be when he's anointed and appointed by Lucifer himself. So I would look to the northern part of the old Roman Empire, maybe from an area like Syria, or especially be wary of Turkey. This was an area of the Roman Empire, and I'm just thinking from the study and that I've done that he may come out of this area. But what's important is he rises up out of the sea, because there's another man going to rise up out of the earth. That will be the false prophet. But the man rising up out of the sea is the Antichrist. And we know then, having 7 heads and 10 horns, there will be 7 major nations, large nations that follow him. And there will probably be 3 minor ones that are kind of gobbled up, hence the 10 horns that are upon his head, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns upon his head, and the name of blasphemy. So this corresponds directly to the white horse rider in chapter 4. When the first seal was broken, the white horse rider rode in, and he went forth conquering and to conquer as a man of peace. This is the very same person. The creature coming up, or the man coming up out of the sea, is the white horse rider of chapter 4 or chapter 5. Maybe it's chapter 5, but you remember that study. And so this is the Antichrist. He'll pretend he's a man of peace, though he in his heart will hate the Jews, and he will be full of the devil. Anyone have a question or a comment that you'd like to make here?
My Thomas Nelson study Bible here, the King James, in the footnotes here, or the latter half of these notes, it says the sea here represents the Gentile nations of the world from which the beast comes. So that's, I guess, one interpretation they have here.
Well, and it is true, because the time of the Gentiles is not up yet. It will finish with the Antichrist. He will have rule and reign, and he will be a Gentile, though he will deceive the Jews into believing he's Messiah. He is a Gentile, and he is finishing up the rule of the Gentiles as the 10 toes of that image of Daniel. The 10 toes represents these 10 crowns, and 7 of them will be stronger than 3. That's why you're seeing 7 horns here. They'll be more, they will be a stronger group. 7 heads and 10 horns. 7 heads, yeah, my wife's helped me out here. 7 heads will be the stronger of the nations, but there will be 10 of them in a league. Years ago, we kind of used to believe that these nations represented the common market nations, but that's not necessarily true. It is absolute truth, though, that it will come out of a revived Roman Empire. And as I said, I'm thinking it's coming from the north. Daniel calls him the little horn that comes up, and I believe that was in the area he was referring to there was Syria. So yes, he is coming as the last Gentile ruler, and Christ will utterly destroy him. If you remember Daniel's vision, that statue of gold, finally there was a stone cut out of the mountain that came and hit this image in its feet. That's the Antichrist kingdom, and utterly destroyed the entire Gentile nation. And yes, that the sea also represents a sea of people, and in particular, a sea of Gentile people. That was a good point, David. Someone else have a comment or a question? Olive, we're in Revelation chapter 13.
Thank you.
Yes, Revelation chapter 13, and we're still only on verse number 1. Anybody else have a comment or a question? Pardon me. All right. So we're down to verse 2. And we're still talking about the same beast. I want you to notice something in verse 2 that you could easily read over. And it says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. There's several things that we know about a leopard. They're swift, they're agile, and I don't know why, but humanity refers to the leopard as changing his spots. Have you ever heard that? The change like the spots of a leopard? Well, I don't know if a leopard actually can change his spots, but notice this man is, in the word, likened unto a leopard, and the Lord knew that we would liken a leopard unto someone who could change their spots, and sure enough, in the middle of the 7 years, he changes his spots. He no longer wears the white hat like a good guy, but he puts on as a man of war, and he is then riding the red horse, and a horse of a different color, and he changes his spots. I thought that was pretty interesting. The feet of a bear, meaning he is powerful. Bears are lumbering and slow, but very powerful, and he will take over nations by force. You can imagine what it would be like to be on planet Earth in the middle of the tribulation when he demands worship and he institutes the mark of the beast, and he closes down the entire economy unless you receive his code, his mark. You'd be very, very powerful and brutal as a bear. Anyone have a question or a comment?
I have another comment here, but
Yes.
it kind of includes verse 3 here. In the last part there of verse 2, it says, and the dragon gave him his power and his seed and great authority. And then when it talks about the head as it was wounded to death and his deadly wound was healed, it's funny that Satan, I don't know, maybe he doesn't, but how is it that he gives power and heals?
Because especially during the tribulation, he will have full exercise ability to do whatever he wants, because the church will be gone. Not entirely the entire Holy Spirit, but Holy Spirit will be here, but he is going to allow the devil to do miracles. And the false prophet, we will find out, will do miracles as well, and he will deceive millions of people because he will have the ability to do miracles. Know this, not everything that is done in the name of the Lord in churches worldwide is God's doing. The enemy has power, and if he thinks he can gain a foothold in a church through deception, he can do things like that. Now, how do I know? Let's go back to the book of Genesis, or Exodus, excuse me. In the court of Pharaoh, Pharaoh had his magicians throw down their staffs, and they became poisonous snakes. That's what we call magic. And real magic is satanic. Now, there's illusionists that work what we also call magic, illusions, and that's all right if they say this is an illusion, it's a card trick. But when they tell you it's magic, it may be, because the devil has given certain people power to perform magic or miracles. And the miracles that Antichrist will perform will be demonic, but they will be real. We will see shortly that they will cause the image in the temple, the statue of Antichrist, to speak and to have the power to kill anyone who doesn't fall and worship the image. So magic, occult magic, is real, and the devil does have power to perform miracles. So don't be deceived by everything you see, thinking that only God can do miracles. God has allowed the enemy power. He created Lucifer and he gave him lots of power. Good
That
point.
makes me think of that show America's Got Talent.
Yes.
They have card tricks on there and they say it's magic. And I don't know.
Well, most of these illusions can be explained. I don't know if you go on YouTube or you like YouTube, but there's a fellow, he's on YouTube, and he's been on TV, and he wears a mask, and he shows you how magicians, so-called magicians, do all of these tricks. And he'll reveal the tricks to you, but there's at least one so-called magician that I'm wondering if it isn't real. I mean, he's actually demonic.
That's what made me think of that,
Yeah.
because you never know.
Yeah, because if
Yeah.
person is calling on Lucifer for power, Lucifer will accommodate them, and Lucifer has great power. We have a hand up over here. Cindy, you got a hand up?
Oh, no, I'm just leaning on it.
Oh,
Oh, but there's a little hand showing on the screen. I don't know how you did it, but
Right
Yeah,
there.
you got
it's all right.
it's
Yeah,
a
if you
little
go-
fake hand.
Yeah,
Really?
you go through chat, and then you can do the if you, what is it there? It says more. Where does it go? Oh, reactions. You got to go to the little clip that says
Oh.
reaction, and then
Okay.
there's a thing there. You can raise your hand or thumbs up or whatever. So
Oh yeah.
maybe just
I don't think that was me.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry.
it's magic.
Yeah.
Does anybody have a question or a comment? Maybe you've got one about magic or something like that. I mean, you just have a comment, you were wondering.
Well, Randy, don't the people that are in like witchcraft and the Druids and some of those higher ups in that line of idiocy, they, like you said earlier, Satan gives them power to do things. So
Yes.
they can, that's where I was thinking, like when Dave was asking that, yeah, they can do some stuff. They might be limited on what they can do, but they can still wreak havoc with people.
Oh, yes, they can. Now, one thing you need to know, that if you're a Christian and you have God's Spirit, they won't have power over you unless you allow it. There's some people that can do voodoo and stick pins and dolls, and now you think, oh, that's just silly, but for the ones that are weak-minded and believe in it, it's real. And you don't want to get it here. And this opens up a whole can of worms here. Christians should never read their horoscope or get involved with their so-called sign. I've had people ask me, what is your sign? The cross. You know, I was born in October, but that doesn't make me any of those signs. That's nothing but they fashion it off of stars in the heavens and stuff like that. I want to tell you that the constellations in the sky, they're nice to look at. God provided them They carry some mystery and they're fun to look at through a telescope, but they do not influence my life. My life is influenced by Christ and Christ alone.
Hey, Randy, what do you think about the Ouija board? I remember that as a kid.
Oh, I'll tell you about the Ouija board. That you opened up another can of worms. Here we go. I'll tell you right off the bat that a Ouija board is very dangerous. Very dangerous. It is satanic. And here's what happened when I was a youngster. I asked for one, and my parents didn't know that there was anything wrong with it. They were just oblivious to the reality of what comes with this game. So I had a Ouija board, and I was 12, 13 years old, and I did not know. And the instructions in the game board told you to put your hands on the little stylus, both people, one across and the other, put your fingertips on the stylus and ask a question. And so my cousin and I figured out a question to ask it. She remembered that there was something on the couch in another room, but she didn't remember what it was, and I didn't know. So we asked the Ouija board, what's on the couch in the other room? And I will affirm before the Lord, that stylus went and spelled out what was on that couch, and it was a stack of records, albums, LPs, the old 33s, a stack of them was, and the thing spelled out albums. And we asked it another question, and it was correct. And it creeped us out. How is this happening? What came in this box? I will tell you that Ouija boards and tarot cards and palm reading and everything like that is absolutely of the devil. I thank God that he forgave me for my ignorance, but I would never let anything like that in my home ever again.
Good thing you didn't ask who you were going to marry, huh?
No, but it wasn't about a year later that I figured out, because I met her in Sunday school when I was 12 years old.
I'll never change.
We went on our first date when we were 14, and you know how the story goes. We got Nina now. Someone else have a question about, because I don't want to rush through this. If you have a question about
why the devil would heal.
Oh.
And I don't know if David, did he answer your question?
Oh yeah.
Okay. We haven't got to verse 3. We'll get there in just a minute. There's something in particular that we need to talk about there. But of course, the dragon in verse 2 is Lucifer himself. Anytime you see dragon in the Bible, it's always referring to evil. And this is it's the personification of Lucifer himself. The dragon gave him power and his seat. In other words, his power, his authority. And you can imagine how powerful Antichrist is really going to be. His position. You know how powerful Michael the archangel is. Well, Lucifer is nearly that powerful, and he's going to give it all to a man. I mean, just imagine. All righty. Another question or a comment? And it could be a question on anything. So don't ever let anybody read your palm. Don't go to the newspaper looking for your fortune, because the enemy will give you a half-truth and he'll lead you down the wrong path. And speaking of these things that the devil has power to do miracles, if you ever hear of somebody in church that's able to tell you your address, your phone number, your maiden name, stuff like this, be very cautious. I'm not saying that it's always of the enemy, But I will tell you firsthand experience that cost me 18 months of my ministry, that it's real and it's of the devil. I had a woman come up to me when I was in Coalinga and I was preaching revival. She came up to me after service and she said, "You have an infirmity. And I know that you're not happy here. God is going to send somebody to take your place and you'll be going back to the Bay Area to be an evangelist." And all of these things were things on my heart. And of course, all were true. And she could not have known that without supernatural help. But as it turned out, and it took me 18 months to figure it out, she wasn't getting her source from the Holy Spirit. She was sourcing a demon spirit. Because the things she said were going to happen in my life, she could tell me what had happened, but she could not tell me what was going to happen. You see, the devil knows your history. And he uses it against you often. He'll tell you, remind you of all the sins you've ever committed, all the times you've ever fell on your face. He'll remind you because he knows your past. But he cannot tell you your future without stumbling over the word of God. So when the enemy reminds you of your past, remind him of his past.
Or his future.
That's the next thing.
Yeah.
So when you catch him on point number one, that he used to be in heaven, remind him of where you're going, and then remind him of where he's headed. My point being, don't believe every miraculous thing that you see or hear is of God, because in these last days, some of it is going to come from the devil to impress and to gain position and to get a position in your life to twist and turn you around. For 18 months, a year or so, my wife and I were living on the edges of our seat because we thought this had to be of God and great things were about to take. It never happened. Never happened. Don't let anybody tell you this. And if somebody comes to you and gives you a word of knowledge, this is what I would say. I believe in a word of knowledge. I believe in the gifts of the Spirit, but I also believe that the enemy can mock them. And you have to be very, very careful. What I would say if somebody says, God is going to move you, God is going to give you riches, and God's going to do that, I would just say to them, well, when that happens, I'll remember you said that. Do not ever live your life according to someone else's prophecy over you. If it's of God, it will come to pass on its own without your effort. I will tell you this, and David's sitting right here and he can tell you. I don't think I'm saying anything, but they were wanting to have a family. And I prophesied over him as well as other ministers that God was going to give him a family, children. And if I'm not, I don't remember if I said a son to begin with, I'm not sure, but whatever. Anyway, years went by, much effort went by, but God brought it to pass.
Mm-hmm.
When it's of God, you don't have to stretch it. When it's of God, it will come to pass whether somebody told you or not. Mm-hmm. Sometimes God lets you know. God strengthens your heart, but he never leads you this way and that way, and like a bull that has a ring in its nose, he'll never jerk you around with that. That is not of God.
Yeah, it took 13 years, but we never lost faith. Never.
Now you got grandkids.
Oh yeah, I was playing with them out in the backyard before I came up here. Yeah.
When it's of God, it comes to pass. And you don't have to do anything to make it, just live for him. That's it. Just be faithful. Anyone else have a question? So do not have a thirst for knowing the future, because the enemy will play on your thirst for wanting to know the future. I will show you your future. It's right here. It's the word of God. That's enough. Because the just shall live by faith.
Yep.
Not by feeling, not by somebody's prophetic utterance, but by faith. And as I said, I firmly believe in all the gifts of the Spirit. And I believe the Lord at one time or another has used me in most of them. But I will give you a word of caution. There are counterfeits. For everything that God does, there's a counterfeit. But one thing, the enemy can't counterfeit the rapture. He
sure.
can't do it.
That's for sure.
Anyone with a question or a comment? Okay, now we're down to verse number 3, and it's an interesting verse. It says, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Now, there's two possibilities here, and you can pick, you can choose. But it could be that one of these nations takes a fall and the Antichrist rescues the nation. And for instance, we're thinking about Rome itself, the nation of Italy. It's not known now to be a world power. It's not known for its financial stability. One thing we know about Rome is its ancient ruins and the Catholic Church that is seated there in the papal city. That's about what you know, but that wasn't the way it was 2,000 years ago. It was a very powerful nation. So is it that the Antichrist is reviving the Roman Empire, and this is the head that was wounded, and now the world is staggered at its revival? Or here's the other possibility. Someone makes an absolute assassination attempt on the Antichrist, and he survives. And all the world wonders after this man who had an assassination attempt and should have died from a gunshot or an attack, but he comes back to life. Now, either one of those would not violate the scriptures or the intent of the scriptures. It's very interesting one way or the other, but it's going to take place. And when it does take place, it will perfectly fit the scriptures. Does anybody else have a comment or a question? There, Brother Bob.
Well, where does China and Russia fit on all of this?
Okay.
We're talking about Israel and Turkey
Right.
and all and everything.
All righty. Well, they are not the revived Roman Empire, but they will have a part. As we get just a little further into Revelation, we'll find out about China. But let me tell you, as we studied a couple of weeks ago, remember we talked about the Battle of Gog and Magog? Did we talk about that? Battle of Gog and Magog?
You did.
Okay. That is Russia gathering, of course, Russia, Iran, probably Iraq, maybe Syria, possibly Egypt. They will come against Israel before the Battle of Armageddon, and quite possibly before the rapture. You remember just about 3 weeks ago when Israel was battling out with Palestine, the Palestinians. That was a precursor. I believe that was a precursor of what's going to happen very shortly. It could have broke into the actual battle, but Russia will will come down, the bear, Russia the bear will come down and will attack Israel with a lot of its constituents, with its allies, Iran, Iraq, probably Syria, Egypt, those that I named, and will come against Israel, and the Lord will supernaturally kill these people. He will destroy, I believe it's 2/3 of this army with supernatural power. They will die right where they're at, and Israel will be saved. So Russia does equate into this end time. But China now is another thing. China is going to come to the battle of Armageddon. We haven't got there yet, but I'll briefly tell you that there will be one final battle, Gentile battle against Christ. And all the Gentile armies will gather in the place of a valley of Megiddo. And it's called the Battle of Armageddon. It also calls the Valley of Jehoshaphat. You might see that also in the Old Testament. And the river Euphrates will literally dry up so that the armies from China, from the east, can come to this battle. And once God has got all of them in that big bowl of a valley, he will destroy them with the word of his mouth. And the blood will flow as high as a horse's bridle for 200 miles. Mm-hmm. So China does play into this, but not yet. Payday's coming. For all the evil in the world, payday is coming. Another question. I like class like this when you ask me questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
So is there a new prime minister for Israel? Was somebody else nominated?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. President Netanyahu was outvoted by like one vote, maybe two. And it's very troubling because he was extremely conservative and he would fight for Israel. Now you're going to see something different because there's so many factions that are in the government of Israel now, and they're going to fight with each other. It's kind of like how the world is viewing the U.S. now. I don't know if you listen to any other news stations, like I listen to news stations out of Australia. They'll come on YouTube, and Australia is laughing at us.
The Sky News. Yeah.
Sky News is laughing, not because they're glad, but because they can't believe we let this happen.
Right.
They don't wish for what's taking place because what hurts us is eventually going to hurt them. Our nation is the last bastion of democracy, true democracy in the world, and we're teetering. And the world is, can you imagine President Putin when he met with Biden, our president? Can you imagine that man? That man has done some things. I'm not going to talk about it here because I don't want to be taken off the air. But that man, he's just laughing. I'll tell you that. He is just laughing. It's like a bully sitting down with a kindergartner and taking his lunch.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Putin is the one taking the lunch. Believe me. That man will take, it's just, oh, we pray for God's mercy. God, get me out of here before this happens.
Well, it's just when you wonder how things can change so fast, this is kind of proof and the faith builder for, I think, everybody in the world to see that, just a year ago or less that Trump was in there. We moved our embassy to Jerusalem. Everything was good and everything was strong. And now, in just a matter, I mean, how, I guess, I don't know. I'm short of saying God taking his hand off of things and let Satan have his way in a lot of things. That's the only way I can see how things change so quickly and expose lots of the church,
Yep.
and other people. So, but things can change back just as quickly. So
Yeah, they can change back. They can change back. Here, you brought up some interesting points there. Our President Trump was facilitating in moving the capital of Jerusalem from Tel Aviv to the ancient city, Jerusalem, the city of God. Very, very prophetically telling that it would happen in our day and time, and it did. But since the change of administration, and Trump also brought about peace accords with the surrounding Arab nations, okay? Now, in the first 100 days, we've had war in the Middle East. We've had the southern border totally violated. We've had hackers shut down pipelines of oil, shutting down the East Coast. There's probably more, but that's just three biggies. And it all happened at the change of administration because people are laughing. They're literally laughing.
Yeah.
But as David said, it can change overnight. I will tell you this much, and you probably know this. They're recounting ballots in Arizona with administrators coming from, I believe, Michigan. What's the other one? Pennsylvania?
Wisconsin,
Maybe Florida.
Georgia.
And it will be telling, to say the least. I think the conservatives in America will be outraged when the truth is spilled out, if the media will cover it and even acknowledge it. You see, the people that control the media control the nation. I'm not saying that God's not involved, but I think God is showing us how our house is out of order right now, because there is one set of people that is controlling things. All right, and another question or a comment?
Just real fast, if I may, is that you're talking about President Biden and his administration and stuff, but Kamala Harris is the one that really irritates the bejeebies out of me. She gets out there and they ask her about going down to the southern border, and all she can do is stand there and laugh.
Yep.
And I've often wondered why somebody in our Congress hasn't yet realized that these people that have taken an oath in office are not paying attention to it. They're destroying it. And why aren't they going after them for that?
Yeah. I want to make one comment, and I'll do it under code. If you want an interesting read, search and find out how Kamala Harris came to political power in the state of California. That's all I'm going to say. Find out how she got there, and then you'll find out what kind of a woman she is. It wouldn't bother me a lick if we had a woman president. If she was Margaret Thatcher,
Right.
oh, I would vote in a heartbeat. Oh, yes, put the Iron Lady in the White House right now.
Yeah.
Candace Owens, put her in right now. A black woman in the White, yes. A black female, yes, right now. No problem with that at all. But put someone in office that got their way the way she did, I wouldn't walk across the street to shake her hand.
Yeah, well, God's allowed it, and we just
Yes.
get to watch it, and history will tell a story,
Yep.
if depending on how long God waits, but it'll come around, and
Yep.
yeah, God's in control. I enjoy the show is all I can say.
Everything's going to come out in the wash.
Right, and
You will see all the evil that is just irritating your shorts off. You're going to see it exposed before all of humanity.
yeah, how are we any different from lots of the stories you read in the Bible? We're not any different. Lots of terrible things happen that you still wonder this day why God allowed it. One
Yep.
day we'll understand. Hopefully when chapter 13 and the rest starts happening, I don't know if they have popcorn in heaven, but maybe we'll be eating it and watching,
I hope they have popcorn. I love popcorn. The only thing I don't like is burnt popcorn in a microwave.
Ooh,
Have
stinky.
you ever done that?
Oh, yeah.
It'll change your day. In fact, it'll change your day for several days because you won't be able to get the stench out of the house.
Randy, if I remember quick, it says, as much as I have fought my 36 years in the military to defend this country and this democracy, right now, I don't care what happens to it. Because I know we've got to, even though I've always been against dictatorships, but God is supreme. God will have the best government that this world will have ever known. And there are going to be a lot of people that are going to be very, very disappointed that they went everything. But I can't back up anymore the democracy. I want God's leadership, period.
Yeah. Well, that is called a theocracy. When deity, God, runs everything. It's called a theocracy, and he will. Theo meaning God. And he's going to run everything, and he's going to use us as his helpers. For the 1,000-year millennial reign, I may be a dog catcher, but I'm going to do something in the kingdom.
Can I be a sergeant? Can I be a sergeant in Michael's army?
You can put in your resume. I don't know. I don't. I'm not the one to ask, but I'm sure we're going to get jobs. Some people get the idea when we go to heaven, we're just going to be strumming harps floating through the air. I'm not. I don't know how to play the harp, and I'm not sure I don't know anything about it, but I do know heaven is as real or more real than what we have here on earth. And heaven is a physical place. It is a real place. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, we're coming up on the end. I don't know, maybe we can go one more verse here. Yeah, Brother Richard, read verse number 4, please.
And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him?
Go ahead and read verse 5.
And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months.
All righty. So this tells you the time period of the first beast out of the sea. That is Antichrist. He will not have any assistance other than of the devil for 42 months, and he will appear to be a great ruler and have a lot of answers to a fallen economy, battles between countries. He will be a man of peace, so to speak, until the 42 month, the 3.5 year arrival time, when the next beast shows up and the horse changes from a white horse to a red horse. And we will get to that place next week. Anybody else have a comment or a question about Antichrist? Now, this doesn't mean that Antichrist is not going to continue in power, but he's going to have a helper. And this man will be the, how do they say it in the mobster world? He'll be the heavy He'll be the hit man. He's the one that's going to twist arms. He's the one that's going to make people worship the first beast and institute the mark of the beast. That'll happen in the middle of the tribulation. Is everybody clear on this so far? Okay, Brother Bob's, he's got the bobblehead going there. Question. If you have a question, please. Sister Olive.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm just wondering why God allowed this to happen. Why this is happening, why he allowed.
This is a very interesting question. And I'm going to answer, I will just briefly answer it right now with you. That it's in God's plan. As David was talking, he has a plan all worked out. And there's questions that people ask in theology. Why does a perfect God, a loving God, allow child abuse or some other hideous crime? How could a all-powerful, loving God allow this? And that question and that study is called the theodicy of God. It's a real question, but you have to know that God, and I'll answer it simply, but I'm going to answer in more detail Sunday morning in my sermon. I don't want to give it away just yet, but I will answer you this, that God didn't want us to be robots. He could have made us robots, but he didn't want us to be that. And so we have the power of choice and free will. It doesn't take away from God's power that he gave us free will. In fact, for me, it makes him seem even that much more powerful, that he'll allow us to do what we want, but have a supreme plan wrapped around the whole thing like a bubble. And he's looking on the inside, watching it happen. And one day he's going to break the bubble. And he is going, as we have said, as David was saying, it's all going to come out in the wash. It's all going to come. So why did God allow all this? It's in his perfect plan, and we will know perfectly one day why he allowed it. But for now, we're just to remain faithful. But I think I'll have maybe a little bit better illustration. And you don't have to watch it live. I want you to go to your church on Sunday morning. But when you get a chance, go on Facebook and just watch this sermon. And I have something that addresses the sovereignty of God. And I think it'll help you.
Okay.
God is sovereign. He's all powerful, and he's not weak because he's watching this. He's allowing this. That is not weakness. That is even greater power, I believe, than someone who would step in and just stop it all. He's got a plan. His ways are higher than our ways.
God knows what will happen no matter what you do.
Yep.
And I finished a book last night at 1:30 in the morning by J. Warner Wallace. He's a Christian, but he was a homicide detective. And he made another point at the end of the book about that God even knows the ifs. And one of the scriptures that he backed it up with, and I don't remember it specifically myself, but you'll recognize it. Remember, he was talking, I forget who it was. I think it was Paul saying, or it was Jesus saying that if the miracles that had been done in you, name the two cities, had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago and sackcloth and ashes. So he's saying, if this had been done, I know what they would have been doing. It didn't happen. It didn't. But if it did, I still know what would have happened. So no matter what you do, if you think, well, should I do this or should I do that? No matter what you pick, God will know what's going to happen.
My whole sermon Sunday is about the Almighty God. Our generation has reduced our thought and concept of God to a terribly low concept. And I'm not going to give it away, but I'm going to address that Sunday. And that is a good point. God even knows the ifs. I have a book. I don't have it with me right here on the desk, but it's a book I want to recommend, and probably some of you have read it. It's called Tipping Point, and it is by Jimmy Evans. Tipping Point. It is worth your money. And I whizzed through that book very quickly. It is captivating. And everything in that book, I would say, whether it is absolutely the way it's going to take place, I believe it is absolutely biblical. We're going to wait and see just exactly how God works everything out. But he's a very good teacher, and his book is an easy read. It's called Tipping Point by Jimmy Evans. You can get it on Amazon, so it's worth your money. It's a paperback, and it's easy to read. He doesn't use, a lot of theological words that are as long as your arm. It's where we can all understand it. Any other questions or comments? All right. Yeah, you go ahead.
For Sunday, when you to look that up on Facebook, Woodland Family
Worship Center.
Worship Center. Okay.
It may not say center.
It may not say center on it anymore. It just may say Woodland Family Worship, and it should come up, and you'll see my ugly mug on there, so you'll know.
It'll say Woodland Family Worship, I believe.
Woodland Family Worship.
Yes.
When you see the Quaker Oats man up there preaching, you know you got the right place.
Oh, I thought it was Gabby Hayes.
No, I'm going for the Quaker Oats look. I need my hat. I got my hat in the closet in there. Okay.
Now that you're on that subject about how to listen to your service, how do I hear this recording for tonight, or we missed last week?
Okay. Well, what you can do is I put it on Facebook, and you can go right to our Facebook page, Patricia Randall White. You'll find it and click on it, and it'll take you to YouTube. Or you can go directly to YouTube, but going to Facebook may be easiest. And click on it, and it'll be there. Now, last week, of course, is already there.
You.
Tonight's won't be on there till about midnight, but I will probably get this on.
Patricia Randall
White.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to write that down now.
Yep.
One L or two? For
Two.
Randall.
On Randall, it's 2.
Always
yeah,
two.
Patricia Randall White. Yeah.
All righty.